Is this the reason your back hurts? Like, I'm talking like every single shred of pain you are feeling. Is this the reason? I ask that because there are a lot of people who think that it is probably the biggest contributor to musculoskeletal dysfunction of the low back and in the hips. And I'm not here to say it is or it isn't. I'm just here to tell you why they think that, and I'll let you make up your mind for yourself. This is the Iliopsoas, and to learn this, we are going to be using one of Kenhub's 100% free articles. You can go ahead and find a link down in the description below. Now, this muscle is actually two muscles. It's what we call a compound muscle. So we have the psoas major, which you can see here highlighted in green, and then right behind it in this red is the iliacus, or you could also say iliacus. To me, it's a potato. There's probably an outright correct way to say it, but I've always been saying iliacus, so I'm just going to keep on going with iliacus. Now, so if we put both of them together, that's what creates the iliopsoas. Now, these are the hip flexors. So if you ever hear somebody say like, hey, I'm stretching a hip flexor, I tore a hip flexor, right, I have tight hip flexors, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about these muscles right here. And so we're going to start to kind of like, in order to unravel this mystery, we're going to start with the psoas major. And so this muscle is, look, I don't know how this is going to come across. I'm just going to say it. This is your tenderloin. Right, so if you think of like a beef tenderloin or a pork tenderloin, that is the psoas major muscle. And this is yours, except yours would not be tender. Because this muscle for human beings, considering we are bipedal, meaning we walk on 2 feet, is really in the elongated position quite frequently, right? We sleep with it elongated a lot of the times. We're walking, we're standing, all sorts of things cause this muscle to be elongated, meaning that it just tends to be a tighter muscle. So I'm not here advocating for cannibalism. I don't think you're going to do it. I'm just also saying it wouldn't even be a good option for you. It's not going to be nearly as tender as it would be on other creatures. Now, this muscle, though, is extraordinarily strong. And what it does, and we're going to be able to see this coming up, is it's wrapping around your hip and it's inserting on the posterior side of the femur. It's inserting in a location called the lesser trochanter. And again, we'll be able to see this in a little bit greater detail, but it's like this little bump back here. If you look closely, you can see like here's the neck of the femur. This giant chunk is called the greater trochanter of the femur. There's like this little smaller bump it's kind of hard to tell from this image, but it's like wrapped around on the posterior side. That is the lesser trochanter, and that's exactly where the psoas major is going to insert. And so what I'm saying here is it curves around, and again, we're going to see this in a little bit, but it curves around the os coxa, specifically the pubis, and what it's able to do is then kind of act like a pulley, and we're going to see it creates kind of like a whip-like effect. Now, it originates all the way up here in the lumbar vertebrae. So this is actually like T12. We can see T12, L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. So this muscle is originating on what are called the vertebral bodies, as well as the transverse processes, which are like these projections off to the sides of vertebrae T12 through L5. Sometimes you're going to see people say it's L1 through L5. The way I've always approached it with my students has been T12 through L5. This is also variable just in its origin. And so this is actually going to be really, really important. Because if this muscle is attaching to these vertebrae, it's going to have the capability to move those vertebrae, right? That's just kind of how muscles work. Now, what I want to do is scan down here and now look at the iliacus again, or iliacus. I'll let you decide on how you want to pronounce this. So iliacus is going to be originating on what is called the iliac fossa. And so the iliac fossa is like this whole space on, like, you can think of like your like os coxae, like your pelvic bones, as being like a bowl, right? It's creating like the pelvic bowl. This is where like the bladder, the uterus, the prostate, there's several structures and organs that are going to be located inside of here. And so in this whole pelvic bowl region, there's like this flat internal surface on those os coxae. We call that the iliac fossa. And then what it's doing is it is also wrapping around on those os coxae, just like psoas major did, and it goes and inserts posteriorly at the lesser trochanter. Right, as you see that both of these muscles are inserting at the exact same location, this is why we kind of like throw them together and call them the iliopsoas, right? You can treat it almost like one muscle, even though they are two separate muscles. And one of the reasons we know that these are separate muscles is because they have different innervations, right? So the iliacus is going to be innervated by the femoral nerve. The femoral nerve is the same nerve that's going to go down and innervate the rest of the quadriceps. Whereas psoas major, this one is actually innervated by the anterior branches of the spinal nerves from this entire region. Typically, it's mostly L1 and L2. So basically, you can picture like little spinal nerves coming out of here, and then there's little branches that are going to come off and start directly innervating the muscle, right? So the anterior branches of the spinal nerves from L1 to L2, although you can see contributions going all the way down to the rest of the lumbar region. So we have different innervation. These are also going to have their own epimysium, right? If you remember, epimysium is going to be the wrapping, the connective tissue wrapping on the outside of it. So when you put all those together, they really are two separate muscles. But since they share this common attachment, we can kind of treat them as one. So what are they going to do? Now, I want to first talk about, like, let's put it this way. If they're called the hip flexors, they're probably going to do hip flexion. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. I have a really cool animation that's going to be able to show that to you. So we're going to shelve that for a second. The other thing they're going to do, though, is what's called external or lateral rotation of the hip. So it's kind of like, I don't know, you're just twisting your entire leg out. Again, we can see this in an animation coming up very shortly. And then here is the thing that's going to help us understand the potential around back pain. Is since they are attaching, or, well, I really should be saying psoas major is attaching to the vertebrae, it's going to have an ability to impact them. Now let's imagine if one of these muscles is contracting. What that can do is actually swing it to the side, right? It can actually do what's called lateral flexion and kind of pull you that way. If both are working at the same time, they're going to kind of like balance. Can you kind of picture like both are contracting, both are equally pulling? You're going to just be more or less stabilized, which is exactly one of the functions it's going to do. The other thing, though, that it can do, if these muscles are tight, right? And when I say tight like that is because it's like how we define tight is kind of up for debate. But my point here is, let's say that there's tension in these muscles. They're also oriented a bit on the anterior side. And what that can do is it can actually pull your low back forward. So this is gonna make me look pregnant, but just I'm doing it for the video, right? This is how much I enjoy the students. I want you to picture this, right? Here's my abdomen. What's gonna happen is, let's say these muscles contract. What it can do is bring the low back forward. It's like deepening that like low back curvature called the lordotic curvature of the lumbar spine. So it is possible that if these muscles are too tight, right, they're experiencing a high degree of tension, that it could actually pull your low back forward, sticking your belly out. This could be a source of back pain. Now, to be technical, the name for that action is actually extension of the back. And you're like, how does that look like? That doesn't make sense for extension. Well, so extension is when you, so this is flexion, right? So I'm going to flex my neck, I'm going to flex my back, right? You can see me kind of curved in like this. Extension is when you go like this. But the thing is, I'm sticking my belly out as I fully extend, and so that's exactly what is happening. So you could also say that the psoas major performs extension of the lumbar vertebral column. And so if this muscle is too tight, then it could actually be creating significant muscle, just pain in the region, because if it's pulling on those vertebrae, remember there are spinal nerves coming out of here. It is possible that it could be irritating those. The thing is, it's hard to really know for sure if that's the source of all this back pain. But I will tell you, that's the reason why you're going to see so many within different manual therapies, like physical therapy, for example, who will have a lot of focus being put on the psoas major, because that is going to make a lot of sense. Now, here's the thing. The iliacus, as you're looking at it, is not attaching to the low back. But that doesn't mean that it can't play a role. Because since it shares this same attachment, it's going to have an influence. If this is tight, it is going to have an influence on the psoas major, so therefore, I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense that it would also be able to contribute to some amount of back pain. Is it as much? Probably not, but I don't want to sit there and pretend as though it doesn't either. So, what I'm going to do is, I promise you, I want to go up here and I want to show you some of the functions. And what's cool is we have this amazing video. I'm going to go ahead and full screen this and we can go ahead and watch. Now, this is going to be just kind of playing in the background. You can see this is flexion, right? So, flexion of the hip is where you're basically just going forward. It's kind of like, and we're going to see, actually, I might as well just let it play so you can actually see this. And by the way, this video is a premium feature. Yes, the article is free, but the videos are premium features, just goes to show how awesome it is. But as we can see in this video, this person is walking. And as they're walking, they're going to actually have a swing phase. And you can see them swinging the hip forward in order to take the step. That action at the hip joint is what we call flexion. Now, the other action I told you that I wanted to show you is going to be, actually, it's going to show you this other one first. Before I get there, I actually want to show you this. This is actually pretty cool because there's different ways we can also look at this, and I think this is worth pausing. So this is an aspect of this is more towards the side of kinesiology when we're talking about like movement. Every joint can do what's called a distal on proximal movement or a proximal on distal movement. So this is going to sound crazy, but well, actually it's not going to sound crazy, but I'm going to show you. Okay, so let's imagine I'm like this, and then let's say I flex my hip. Right, that is flexion. You can see my ripped pants. That happened the other day. Don't judge me, but it's going to go up like this, and you can actually see that I am flexing my hip. I'm going to also show you flexion of the hip a different way. Watch this. I'm doing the same action at the joint, but different parts of my body are moving, right? If the distal segment is the one that's moving, we call that a distal on proximal movement. If the proximal segment is moving, that is a proximal on distal movement. And so that's what we're actually seeing here. And so I'm going to go ahead and press play, and we can see that a time that all of you are going to be familiar with when this is actually in action. It is contributing to this sit-up and crunch movement. Now, other muscles are too, including the abs, which is why people do this, but you can see they're saying thanks to psoas major for that very reason. Just goes to show it does more. And then this is the action that I also mentioned earlier that I definitely want you to see, and that is external or lateral rotation of the hip. Again, you're just kind of swinging it outwardly. They're going to show us an example of what this can actually look like. But remember, there are two different types of rotation, medial or internal, and then lateral or external. And as you can see, if you watch her hip, you're going to see it just kind of like whoop, rotate that way. That is what we call external rotation of the hip. So I think that's a really good breakdown of what this muscle is going to do. So I hope this makes a lot of sense, and it's going to help you understand more about what the psoas major and the iliacus do together as the iliopsoas. So remember, this is a free article. You can go ahead and find a link down in the description below. Go ahead and check this out. You can see there's so much value here. It's going to absolutely blow you away while you're down there. Be sure to like the video, leave a comment. Those things are always appreciated. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one.